And thus begins a glorious stretch of shows coming up here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, where we will have guests. Let there be guests again. Enough of me shouting into the void. Again, as always, it's always my fault when this doesn't happen for a while. I was just to pull back the curtain a tiny bit before we actually get into the meat of today's show. I'm constantly trying to figure out what type of show makes the most sense. And I think because guests can kind of bring different items to the table, the buy and sell topic made the most sense. Because I could have guests on and I could say, hey, what do you think about so-and-so? But like, it's the same thing that I probably talked about the day before, and I'm kind of leading the conversation at that point. This is a way for the guest to lead the conversation. You guys are going to hear about names that I wasn't planning on bringing up. There might be some overlap, but that's why I think this is going to be fun. So it begins today. We're going to have at least one more between now and the start of next week. My hope is to have something like 5 to 10 of these types of shows between now and Christmas. We'll see if I can get it done. But enough delay. Let's get into the actual meat of the show. Kayla, welcome back, for goodness sake. So nice to see you again. At Kayla_Fonte on Twitter and Blue Sky.
I couldn't get it with the underscore on Blue Sky for some reason, so it's just Kayla Fonte. But thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Well, honestly, like, did you want the underscore, or you'd probably rather
I
get rid of
did.
it in both, though?
Honestly, okay, I wanted to be consistent, right? So
Sure.
I was debating, like, what should I do? Should I just change my X account? But I was like, that's too much work. So Kayla_Fonte on Twitter and then Kayla Fonte on Blue Sky. So we'll see how I go from there.
I'll tell you, it could be worse. Someone took Dan Bespris on Blue Sky. What the hell? I'm the only
That's
one I've ever
crazy.
heard of. It's a very weird last name. It's like a Yiddishized spelling of a Hebrew word. There's no other Dan Bespris out there, especially not
It
one
could
that
be a
was
big fan.
Oh, it could. Yeah, it's almost
You could have
definitely.
a fan account.
They're squatting on it. They're going to probably try to sell it to me someday when they think they can squeeze me for $85. But I don't have $85. Joke's on you, guy sitting on at Dan Bespris on the Blue Sky Network. Anyway, first of all, welcome to the show, everyone who's watching. Welcome to the show, Kayla. I don't want people to delay any longer. Kayla's brought 4 names to today's show. Some buys, some sells. Where do you want to go first? The boat is yours to steer.
Ooh, I think we're going to start with the buy lows. There's a couple interesting names that I want to discuss.
All right, hit me.
All right, so number 1, Jarrett Allen. I haven't seen really many people talking about him, which is interesting considering the past few games that he's had. But I was looking at hashtag basketball's rankings. So over the past 14 days, he has a ranking of 139th. Over the past 7 days, 209th. And this season, he has a 51st ranking. So there's a pretty large disparity there.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut in on you there.
All good. Go ahead.
There's a lot to sort of unpackage, and he's been extraordinarily roller coastery so far this year. I think the first 2 weeks he was like a second rounder, and then he had like a top 100 week, and then he was like a first rounder for a week, and then he's been 200 for a week. How can you use that to your advantage?
Yeah, I think it's really just about capitalizing on those periods. So like right now, just buy a low on him, right? Because as you said, he has been up and down. So right now, while he's down, you could probably get him for a good discount. And then maybe at one point when he's a sell high, you could sell high on him and try and get a better player. So it's just about kind of like monitoring the trends and things like that.
How long, Kayla, when you're working on buy low and sell high, and this is getting into a little bit more of the kind of philosophy of trading, how long do you feel a player typically has to be performing well or poorly before you can start to see a little bit of that kind of daylight between where they're at and where you project them to be at?
This is a bit of a tricky one because I think for everyone, it's a little bit different. Like for me and even DMAC, when we do our sell highs and buy lows, we really look at the past 7 days and the past 2 weeks. So we kind of compare it and look at that. But I think if you're looking at the past 2 weeks and a player has just been really underperforming, I think that's the best time because it's been a long period of time and people are going to be looking at those past few games and just be like, wow, he's been crap for this long. Right. And they're more
Yeah.
likely to trade. The longer it is, the better it is, I
Yeah,
think.
100%. I have one more question on Jarrett Allen before we move into anybody else. But before that, I got to tell everybody about our partners at Bet Online, who continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC. So head to Bet Online today and don't forget, for a limited time, use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. This is the hard part, and we're all sort of throwing blindfolded darts to some degree, but what do you think it would take to get Jarrett Allen right now? And then kind of hand in hand with that, what are you comfortable giving up for him?
Hmm. I usually when I look at like targets, I go based on rounds or rankings. I don't like to say like players just because based on your league settings and what kind of league that you're playing in, it could really differ. So I think if you target someone in like the 6 to 8 round, I think that you could probably get away with that, especially with based on where his ADP was.
Do you think it's easier or harder? I know I'm going off script here a little bit. Do you think it's easier or harder to trade like similarly styled players? Like if you were trying to get Jarrett Allen, would you generally say, oh, here's a center I have that maybe I project to be a little bit worse? Or do you think it's easier to go a different direction? Or do you think it makes no difference at all and you're just sort of hunting like who's a hot player lately that people believe is going to stick it out where you feel like their ranks are going to be kind of like ships passing in the night?
I don't think it really makes too much of a difference. I feel like with trades, like they're so inconsistent and random.
They really
Like
are.
you see all kinds of things. So I feel like yeah, it's just like completely random, I feel.
When
I know
you,
some people are like that though, where they like to do like centers for centers or like that kind of thing.
yeah, I just like sometimes it's a little easier if you can match up the player type, but it very much is
Mhm.
all over the map. Have you had the incredible experience of talking about a trade either on social or on a show or whatever, and having somebody yell at you that it's a taco league? That's like the rite of passage.
Oh, for sure. You know what? I actually haven't done any trades in any of my leagues yet myself, but there have been other trades in our Bitches Be Balling league, like trade offers, and they've just been outrageous. And we even did a show on it recently too. And I don't think anyone really commented on it saying like, "Oh, that's taco," but I could definitely tell that whoever was watching that was like, "What the actual hell is that offer?" Like it was just so crazy that it's like, is that even real?
Yeah, there's always something going on, and sometimes, like for me, I also have not had the time to go out and propose a bunch of trades, but so far I've now made two because they just they fall in your lap. I want everybody to watching to understand that these weird trades, they really do happen. And so if
Mhm.
you're thinking about someone like a Jarrett Allen, I know we have a lot of other stuff to cover, so I don't want to go spend too much more time on Allen in particular, but like if he's sitting here 45, 50, whatever it is, and you're looking at other guys that are maybe a tiny bit back of that or around that marker, and you're trying to pair them up, like we throw out these names on shows, we throw out ranges on shows, and everybody's initial response is to say, oh, that'll never happen. I promise you guys, these trades can and will happen. Just because they don't happen in your league doesn't mean they're not happening, but that's why you try different things to see kind of what sticks. You never know when you're going to catch a manager in your league who has a different valuation of a particular player than you do. Kayla, take us to our next buy low.
It's none other than LeBron James,
The king.
the king. Yes. This is an interesting one too. I mean, so with hashtag basketball, so over the past 14 days, ranking of 73rd. Um, that's 14 days. The past 7 days, 104th.
Yeah, and
And
that's
he's
after a
ranking
better
35th.
ball game yesterday, by the way.
He did. That's the thing. So, like, some people have that recency bias. So that window could be closing depending on how his next couple of games go. But when you're looking at the past 2 weeks, definite buy low. I mean, especially when you're looking at the 3-point shooting. which has been just atrocious. I believe he missed 20 consecutive threes.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally closed that record last game. I believe he finally hit a three, only had one, but still, he had 5 games with under 20 points in the past 2 weeks. And in that period, he's averaging 20.1 points per game. And just for reference, his lowest scoring average in his career is 20.9 in his rookie year.
Yeah, and I just threw up the Basketball Monster player ranking page so folks can see. This is over the last 2 weeks. They've got him at 133. And the big issues there, as folks can see, and by the way, Kayla, you and I are in total lockstep on this one. I've been talking a lot about LeBron this week. 45% from the field. And again, that's after a good ball game. He was under 40% from the field prior to the better performance in Miami. 5 turnovers per game, only 1.1 combined steals and blocks. You talked about his lowest scoring output over those 2 weeks. He's only at 20 points per game, barely in a couple of these last few games, continuing his double-digit scoring streak, which is at like 2,000 games or something stupid like that. And the question, I guess, then we got to pivot into the other side of this, and this is where there's always a struggle. What are you willing to give up to get LeBron? Because I'm quite comfortable giving up someone in like the 30 to 50 range with the expectation that LeBron's going to probably go back to pushing what he was before this cold stretch, which was, I mean, he was top 15 before this bad snap happened.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, that is my exact range. I think you could definitely get, top 50 for sure. Like that 30 to 50 range seems appropriate. And it's just funny too, because I think like when a lot of managers see a 40-year-old going through a slump like that, they just start getting worried. Like, oh my God, LeBron is washed, and all the criticism comes out and things like that. So yeah, I think some people will be willing to just get rid of him just because of those concerns. Even though, I mean, like this is LeBron James that we're talking about. We all know what he's capable of, top player in NBA history. But I mean, with 40 years old and all those concerns, like injuries and things like that, people are going to be willing to just pass him off.
Look at this. Look at this god-awful run of shooting that he was on between November 23rd and December 2nd, which is a span of 6 ball games. 41%, 44, 44, 39, 43, 25. That was that 5th game in 7 nights. So if anybody's not like, oh, gee, I wonder what happened there. And then he happened to get a day of rest and then came back and shot 12 out of 18. And this is the drum that you got to beat. And you know, when I put a tweet out about the concept of the 5th game in 7 nights, and everybody's immediate reaction is to call the NBA soft. But I don't think anybody that's doing that on Twitter has ever had to play 5 NBA games in 7 nights with a bunch of air travel in between them. It's hard. And it's harder now than it was 30 years ago because guys are bigger and stronger and faster now. So every minute they're on the court is an even higher energy expenditure because they're, for better or worse, like these giant freak of nature, muscle flying humans. That energy expense is crazy. And it's not just the Lakers, who happen to be very old and very slow. It's across the league. Teams playing their 5th game in 7 nights can't guard anyone because they're stuck in the mud on defense, and they can't shoot jumpers. So this was the perfect time, Kayla. And again, I'm just backing you up on this one. I'll play devil's advocate at some point on today's show. The absolute perfect time to put in an offer on LeBron was before this Miami game, but I think it's still available because turnovers have been bad. The team looks bad, and so that sort of creates that gray cloud over things. But I'm with you on this one, and I would probably spend more for him than you'd even have to get him right now. Take us to some of your sells. What's next on the docket here? I'm interested in a sell.
So the sell high is someone who a lot of people, including Josh Lloyd, have been talking about recently. So I think you already know where this is going.
I'm going to put him up before you even say this.
You already knew. Because, I mean, I'm with Josh on this one. Like, I just do not think that this is sustainable. And I'm going to go through the hashtag basketball rankings again. So for the past 2 weeks, 14 days, he's ranked 15th. And the past 7 days, that's 6th. And overall this season, he's ranked 12th. And last year, he was 53rd. So, yes, he's a great player. He's someone who you're going to get in the middle rounds. but to see him providing like top 5 value at some points this season, that's insane.
It's
There
insane.
is no way. I cannot see it. Like, yeah,
I'm
he'll still be a solid player, but mm,
Yeah, I'm gonna throw, and this is the Vooch basketball reference page. I know this is gonna be kind of hard for people to see, but unfortunately, if I zoom in more, you can't pack everything on the screen together. I just want to draw everybody's attention. If you're watching along with us, if you're listening, I'll make sure to read the numbers off. And by the way, I'm with you on this one as well. Josh and I just had a really funny conversation about this exact topic on his show because he wears it every time he talks about selling high on
mhm,
Vooch. And for some reason, when I say it, everybody's like, yeah, that's a very measured and reasonable response. And he and I have had a laugh kind of off to the side about how different the listener reaction is. And I think I get a pass because everybody's like, oh, Dan, he just loves these old plodding types. So, but here's the thing. I wasn't that high on Vooch this year for the first time in a while because I thought he was going to get moved. I thought he was going to get kind of sidelined a little bit by a
mhm,
potential youth movement. And instead, he's been fantastic. But like what you're talking about, um, there's some wildly unsustainable stuff going on in his numbers. Like, Kayla, I'm sure you've looked at the field goal percent 58. That's
yep,
ridiculous.
yeah,
That's on almost 5 3-point attempts per game, by the way, which he's also shooting 48% on. Career 35% from 3, career 50 from the field. We're talking about like damn near a 10 percentage point gap, and people don't realize what a massive impact that can have on your actual fantasy value, which again, I mean,
mhm.
first round, like we don't want to take anything away from the guy, but like these numbers are crazy, right?
Yeah, totally. I was even looking at his three-point shooting. So he's averaging 2.7 for the past 2 weeks and 4.5 in the past week. And just
Oh,
for reference, last year he was averaging about 1.
yeah.
Like, I'm like, "What?" Like,
Yeah,
there's no way.
and I think I was on about 30, if I'm reading, yeah, about 30% one last year, and lately he's at about 50%. Um, the number that I like to look at, and hopefully this will help steer people a little bit as they're looking at what is and is not sustainable, is effective field goal percent, which is for those watching on YouTube, is this column here that I know is hard to see. But this season, his effective field goal percent is 66. And people might not have context on that. So we'll just use Vooch as, other Vooch years as an example of it. Previous year, 55. Sorry, 52. I misread that. 55 was his 2-point percent last year. 52 was his effective field goal percent last year. The best he's ever had in his career was 57. And again, he's at 66. On top of the fact that this year, by the way, he's taking 1.5 shots less than he did last year. So all of this is just screaming like career. I guess we're at what, about a month and a half or so of
Mhm,
basketball. And that's the thing to put it all in perspective. A month and a half, 20 games. You see 20 games, people are like, oh, yeah, this is a thing. This season's only a month and a half old. There are 3 more segments of season of almost this
mhm.
exact length coming up. Kayla, what do you think you can get for Vooch, though? Because the skepticism is there, and rightfully so. What can you get back?
I think it is, but, like, some people are just so high on Vooch, and they think that he can sustain this for the rest of the season. And, yeah, maybe there's a possibility that he finishes higher than he did last year. I think that's totally possible. But I think some people are willing to give up a lot to get him. So I wanna say maybe, like, 3rd-ish, 4th round is reasonable for most people. But some people may be willing to go higher than that. Like, I was reading through, comments on Josh's show that he did on Sell
Oh, you
Highs,
read the comments. That's
and
terrifying.
I saw something about how someone traded Vooch for Trey Young and someone else. So
Wow.
I thought that was crazy. I can't remember who the player was. Maybe it was Schroeder. But I mean, some people are just willing to take that chance. And for me, I just think that there's too much uncertainty about his future on the team.
Mhm.
And that's really just making me cautious.
Yeah, I can't blame you on that one. Also, just one of the funniest, like the and I'll make sure we tag Josh on something related to this because I'm sure he'll get a laugh about it as well. The Vooch stuff is amazing, and I feel so bad about the fact that he was like my ride or die for about a decade straight. And this year I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to end up with that much Vooch unless he falls like past 55. And he rarely did in my drafts. And so I don't think I have him anywhere. And now he's
Same.
shooting the lights out. I'm looking back at my preseason buckets. I had him in bucket 15 alongside Siakam, Zach LaVine, Beal, Walker Kessler. So not like crazy low, but like 50s. Guys going in the 50s. And he just wasn't making it to me there. So I'm sorry, Vooch. You've had an amazing year so far, but now we're gonna also try to cash in on you if that's
Yep.
okay. Last one. Who's your other sell? And I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate on this one because you told me who it is already. Walk me through your last sell high.
The last one is Cam Johnson because I do not think that this is sustainable at all. So for the rankings, 43rd over the past 2 weeks, 39th past 7 days, and overall this season so far, he's 48th. But last season, he was 142nd, and these are category league rankings. Just like look at his 3-point shooting. He's averaging about 4 per game over the past 2 weeks. Completely unsustainable. He's a good 3-point shooter, but not 4 per game. There is no way. And even his scoring average, I think it was about 13-ish last season. Now he's up to 20-ish over the past 2 weeks. And also Cam Thomas has been out too. So he's had to step up a lot offensively and be like a top scoring option. So there's also that. And even like defensively too. His steals have been up. But for me, there's just so many inconsistency and injury concerns around this guy that I will not, I personally won't trade for him, but I think this is the perfect time to sell high on him.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head on the Cam Thomas thing. That's a big one, and I can't properly play devil's advocate on that point because that one's just inarguable. You can see in the game log for Cam Johnson when Cam Thomas has gone down, his number of shots per game have basically spiked. He was typically between about 9 and 14 when the team was fully healthy. And over the last 2 weeks or so, he's got a 17, an 18, a 20, and a 21 in that mix. He has 3 games in there where he's attempted 12 or more 3-pointers. My devil's advocate point on him isn't so much about what he's done over the last 2 weeks, but what he was doing prior, which was still kind of in that like 50 to 60 rank range.
Mm-hmm.
And like percentages wise, he's not that far away from like the expected number. It just has to do with his aggression level. How aggressive is he being taking shots? So let me pose you this question. If I offered you like a 60 range guy for Cam Johnson, would you take that? Is that enough for me to buy him off of you?
Honestly, just because I'm not a big Cam Johnson person, I would probably consider it. I think you might even be able to get a little bit higher for him, though.
Hmm.
I want to say like 50 to 60 range. I just think that this is his peak value right now. And I
Oh, yeah.
know that the Nets are like 8th in the East, but I'm just expecting so many silly season shenanigans down the stretch with a tank for Cooper Flag that I'm just worried about that. So I'd
Yeah,
be willing to get him off.
you're countering my devil's advocate admirably here. Let me try to see if I can keep doing it here. Because, like, viewers, listeners, you should know I actually agree. Because as much as I love what Cam Johnson is doing, February through April is going to be a very scary time to roster someone on the Brooklyn Nets that has
Mhm.
more than like a season and a half of basketball under their belt. And he's not an old guy, but he's also not, a rookie or something like that. He's not someone they're trying to develop or something along those lines. The reason I like him is, unlike with Vooch, with Cam Johnson, the peripherals are not that crazy. And it's more just about, oh, he's finally taking a bunch of shots. This is what we've wanted him to do for years. It's why I had him on most of my boards when he came over to Brooklyn. But then he only took 10 and a half shots a game last year. I wanted so much more. He ended up, there's also the injury stuff, as you astutely pointed out. He's gone through multiple procedures, similar ones. But like just from a strict shooting standpoint, he's had years where he shot 42, 43% from downtown, 46, 47 from the field. So he's not that far off on that number. but the like 15 to 20 field goal attempts happening lately with Cam Thomas out, that's the big one there. And people might forget that, number one. And people might forget that Brooklyn is already sort of like kind of messing with their roster a little bit. So I am inclined to agree with you on this one. I'm not as like gung-ho in this one as possible because I do think there's a certain measure of value in squeezing what you can out of him if you can't get enough. So, Kayla, one more follow-up question on this. I want to try to dig a little bit deeper on Cam Johnson. If I only offered you like a 70 range guy, is that enough, or would you just hold on and see if you can squeeze more out? I'm
I
wheeling
would
and dealing
hold.
on today's show.
Yeah, honestly, I would hold. I would hold. I think you can definitely get a little bit more. Like I was saying, like 50 to 60
That's what
for
you want there.
me. Yeah, and I think Cam Thomas is still out for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's probably going to only have higher value over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question that doesn't have anything to do with any of the four players that we've been talking about on today's show. And this is just about pulling off trades in general. Kayla, what is your actually before we do that, tell me what you're working on these days. Then I want to get into the more like 30,000 foot view before we let you go on your merry way. What are you
For
working
sure.
on?
Yeah, so mainly right now it's just podcasts. So Between Two Hoops
Nice.
with NBA Fantasy Bible and Bitches Be Balling with Yuri Ono, which we absolutely love. Shows every week for both of them. And also Last Word on Sports, where I write some articles. And yeah, just some Twitter stuff and Blue Sky as well.
Check it out. Kayla_Fonte on Twitter. Kayla Fonte without the underscore. So sad on on Blue Sky. So macro view. Last question, but it's a broad topic one. When you're thinking about making trades, what is your general process? I think we all sort of think about this stuff differently. I'll just say for me personally, I don't propose a ton of buy low, sell high trades because I know the hit rate on those is a little bit lower. You have to have time to really dig on this stuff, and most of my time is spent creating things for people to think about. So a lot of my trades are more of the ROI trade. Who's the guy that's the best fit for my team, best fit for this other team? Because I want to make sure that whatever I'm researching has like a really high hit rate. But what is your plan of attack when you're formulating trades or starting to think about getting them done? This to me is like maybe the most interesting thing is how everybody thinks about it.
Yeah, because everyone has a different approach to it. And for me, it's mainly just looking at my team and assessing it. Like, what do I need? What am I lacking? What am I really trying to build in here? Who's a good target for me? Who am I willing to get rid of? So it's just assessing like all these different factors. And I'll try and keep a couple of targets in mind. Yeah, sell highs and buy lows. I don't do super often, but every now and then I will. But yeah, it's really just looking at targets, and I'll look at, okay, if there's a player on another team that I really want, I'll kind of look at their team and be like, what are they strong in? What are they lacking? What's a fair trade that we can work out between the two of us that'll help both teams? Because I think the big thing with trade is that a lot of people are trying to rip off the other person. And
Yeah,
if you're doing that, like, no one's going to want to trade with you. So
they
yeah,
are
that's just
not.
my approach.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Kayla, thank you so much for carving out time to
Thank
come on,
you.
bringing names with you, because as everybody knows, if you're going to come on a Dan podcast, I'm going to make you do all the work. Oh, what a great host I am. You can again find Kayla on the various social medias. You can try it with and without an underscore, and eventually you'll hit it right. Last name is
Exactly.
Fonte. First name Kayla, Kayla. Kayla, much appreciated as always,
Thank you.
and keep them bitches balling.
I love that. We will. We will.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Kayla Fonte back on the program. I think that's just the second time. So I probably need to do better with that. I need to do better with a lot of stuff. Dan Titus is going to be the next of our buy and sells. I can actually confirm he and I are recording on Friday, which is probably today, depending on when you're watching this. And that one will likely air on Saturday morning. Seems like you guys actually like the Saturday morning pods. I'm learning, friends. I'm figuring it out as we go. As far as what else is coming up here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, we will have our big week in review episode. That's dropping a little bit later on today. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe. That's the biggest and most important thing that you can do. Please subscribe no matter how you're taking in the content. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, other. Hit that subscription button. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, the 5-star reviews also really do, believe it or not, go a long way towards when someone searches fantasy basket or fantasy hoop or something like that. Boink! You want your buddy Dan's show popping up near the top of those results. I am at Dan Vespers on Twitter. I'm at Old Man Squad over on the brand new Blue Sky Network. Another big thank you to Kayla Fonte for carving out time, bringing her own recommendations and her own data and her own research, and allowing me to just sit back and say, all right, either I agree or I disagree, and play a little devil's advocate just because why the hell not? We're having fun with it. Kayla's awesome. Again, it's with the underscore on Twitter. It's without the underscore on Blue Sky. Again, back with another show in just a couple of hours. Sit tight. Subscribe if you want to know when that sucker drops, and we'll see you then. I'm Dan, and I'm out.